joining us from all around the world. I saw the number was almost 300 and also on YouTube as well. So we got quite a lot of attractions, and I know many friends will be watching it later when they wake up.
Wonderful. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce to you the moderator of the second panel, Framing Human Security, a Shared Security for People and the Planet, Professor Azza Karam, the Secretary General of Religions for Peace. Azza, you have the podium.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm really sorry I've completely confused our technical colleagues who are making all this possible, so please forgive me. I hope you can all hear me, and a warm welcome once again to all of you. My name is Azza Karam, and I have the distinct privilege of serving an organization that is otherwise known as the United Nations of Religious Institutions and Faith Communities, Religions for Peace for short. I have the distinct privilege of moderating. The one before, the session before was the high level opening. I'm assuming this is a high level framing, and everything else we are going to do, inshallah, will be very high level for the rest of the day. So just that we're absolutely clear on that, and everyone who's sitting here deserves remarkable kudos for the work that they do. And we're extremely honored to have the opportunity, now that we've heard about the various positions on human security, institutional, from governmental, non-governmental, and intergovernmental spaces, we have a chance to look a little bit more deeply at the broader framing, which is what this panel will be intentioned for. I want to pay special tribute to much of the wisdom that was shared in the high-level opening, noting in particular the points made about the value added of religion and religious actors, but also the specific needs that have been heightened as a result of the multiple crises that our planet and the people, everyone on it, every living creature on it happens to be facing. As somebody who had the distinct privilege of concocting the idea for these seminars 9 years ago, together with Dr. Levi Bautista, Rudolmar Bueno de Faria from the ACT Alliance, and Alison Kelly, and our colleagues from Peter Prove and other colleagues in the World Council of Churches, just understanding and being able to compare 9 years of discourse over time has left me extremely humbled by the fact that I think it's no longer new that the United Nations colleagues speak about religion and the value of religion. Indeed, it seems much more mainstream that there are not only opportunities to appreciate in terms of discourse, but also to showcase multiple forms of partnerships and collaborations over time. This, for somebody like myself, who started in the UN 20 years ago, trying to make the case for why religions matter, to be able to see now how the United Nations system colleagues are taking on board and realizing how faith, communities, organizations, leaders matter is incredibly heartening. Having said that, I think that it would be important as part of the framing, which we will be much better informed of through the expertise on the panel, it is important to understand that we still speak about religion when indeed we are talking about religions and faiths. And the multiplicity and the diversity hold the key to the how we engage and work together. We also are sometimes unaware of the fact that the bulk of those whom we seem to be speaking of and describing tend to be largely, and I'm being very general, categorized into two spaces. One is the largely Christian-dominated groups, organizations, networks, and leaders. And the other is the occasional reference, sometimes open, sometimes subtle, to the other religions that happen to be in existence. Invariably, we speak about human security, but we speak about human security from a position and a space of fear of the other. We know what confronts us, as our colleagues from UNDP and many others have noted. We know the challenges that we are confronted with, but perhaps we may, or we should be, a bit more humble to acknowledge that we may not have perfected what we need to know in terms of the art of engagement with religions and faiths. And one of those concerns that I would want us to see how we can address, and I'm very grateful that Ulrika mentioned gender and women's rights issues, I would like us to please realize that when we aggrandize religions and specific religions and religious leaders, we often also create the space for a remarkable amount of ego-driven engagement. What we need to understand is that one of the main lessons of engaging with different religions and faiths should be humility. And that humility remains difficult to see. We hear about it a lot, but seeing it in action is quite another thing. What we also need to appreciate is this. We have many amazing leaders who are teachers from different faith traditions. But I would challenge any of you in this room and the other colleagues online to name one other than the Pope. And the reason we will all be able to remember the Pope is not only because of his stellar leadership of all faiths, quite frankly, but the reason we will remember the Pope is because our media tells us and reports on what the Pope does and rarely ever tells us about what the other faith leaders and faith communities do, unless, of course, somebody blows themselves up, in which case we will hear all about it. The truth is that we have a great deal to do as faith actors in this case, and I'm taking responsibility only for the faith actors. As faith actors, we still have a lot to do in order to come together as equals and understand that there's no other amongst us. As we heard from Bishop Bedford, it's not simply a matter of one God loving one kind of community and the rest are somehow in the dark, but it is a question of a divine that loves us all. And we are all, as we are all equally loved, our faith leaders should be equally respected. And we have to hold them to account for that respect, because that respect of all faith leaders is a form of accountability. To keep praising religion and specific religions only means that we can effectively risk aggrandizing the ego of that particular religion or religious institution or religious leader. But to hold them accountable to working together as equals and to seeing one another as equals is how we obtain human security. Because then we are all holding ourselves accountable to the ultimate love of the divine. Excuse me. Without further ado and no more preaching, I have a remarkable privilege of being able to now introduce our first speaker, who's also a personal friend and a colleague. Dr. Samuel Risk, I know you insisted on putting it as Mr., but you do have a PhD. Dr. Samuel Risk is the head of the Conflict Prevention, Peacebuilding and Responsible Institutions team in the Crisis Bureau of the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. Dr. Risk, the floor is yours.